Continuing in time lapse, using the clay tubes brush here just to work that deltoid again. See, we're returning to the arm now. We're really kind of whittling them down to the next level. We're not going in for a large amount of detail just yet, but we are going in and trying to really refine the different forms of the muscles that we suggested, just a little while ago using the standard brush. And here I'm doing the same thing again. I'm coming back in with that standard brush, masking out the area of the flexors or the extensors of the forearm, and then stroking those in, trying to get those shapes suggested there. I'll suggest a shape and then go in and try and refine the shape. And right now I'm just trying to suggest the flow and the direction of those extensors and those flexors. I really like those shapes a lot. The forearm is like the ear and the nose in that it can be a very intimidating part of the body to work on. The ear looks very complex. The nose looks complex. The forearm definitely is complex. But once you have invested some time in it, you've got a better understanding of it and how it moves and how it changes through its movement. It's a lot of fun to sculpt. I really, really like sculpting forearms. Hands as well. Hands are another one. Hands are still a big challenge. I think for all artists, hands are always a challenge. It's kind of the litmus test. You don't want to hide the hands or try and call attention away from them because it just that makes them stand out even more. So the only way through it is through it. You just have to learn hands. But they're beautifully expressive. I really, really love hands. I think you could potentially say more with a character's hands than with the face. You could have a expressionless face, but the hands can still say so much. I'm using Smart Resim right here under the deformation menu to regain my symmetry. What you'll do is you'll mask the side of the model that you want to keep, and then use Smart Resim to copy the vertex positions of that side to the opposite side. So it allows you to correct any symmetry errors that you might have. Notice the gesture in the wrist here too. I've got a very extreme ramping down from the carpal bones into the bones of the hand, the phalanges. And it's a bit of an affectation, or not an affectation. It's an extreme pose there. It's I'm trying to really give a sense of there being attenuation and length to the limb. So there are hands that will do that. You'll see that in reality, and it's just a really beautiful line. I think not used for certain types of characters. Using transpose to rescale the hands again. When in doubt, make the hands big. I want this guy's hands to be big just because I find that really creepy. He's really long and lithe, and he should have big hands that can grab you. So here, at this stage, I'm still really not sure where I'm going with this nose. As you can see, at this stage, I'm still kind of playing with the idea of it being a cavity. But it's just not working. It's just too... it's taking a lot of character out of the face. It's just reducing it to a cell. Ultimately, go with the nose. We bring a nose in here, and I really do like the way the nose works out. We sort of split the difference, too, by giving a very very defined nasal bone that you can see right there, that nasal bone. We have that very sharply defined above the nose once we sculpt that nose in. So I'm sculpting some striations here between the cheekbones and the lips, trying to create a sense of there being stretching flesh there, trying to catch shadow. And you can see here that the teeth Z-tool is pushing through, so I'm just switched over to the teeth and I'm scooting those edges down inside the head. And scooting the teeth around and then correcting the other side. Now moving back to the body, switching over to the body Z-tool. So I'm going to increase the speed of the time lapse for the next few minutes and just go ahead and watch the process as I sculpt, and then I'll be back in a little bit and we'll talk some more about what's happening on screen. So as promised, I'm back and we're going to talk a little bit about the hand now. This is definitely an interesting part of the video. I'm suggesting the knuckles here, just using the inflate brush. I find the inflate brush works really well for going in and inflating with the fingertips and the knuckles, and just it gives you this nice natural taper then in between each individual joints. Hands are a tricky one. I'll spend a lot of time on hands. They've gotten a bit easier with practice, but I don't want to tell you that they get easy. There's so much nuance to them. Just like when you're sculpting lips and eyes, how any slight little change can really alter the character. I find that hands are really similar. Just the slightest little change can just throw them. But if you love this, if you love sculpting, then you'll love the process of sculpting hands. You'll just keep sculpting them. And you learn something new with every hand that you sculpt. You learn something new with every sculpt. So I'm bringing the flare out on that thumb. A really good reference for hands is Bern Hogarth's book on drawing dynamic hands. I find Bern Hogarth's work to be really good as a sculptural reference. I didn't find it very useful when I was drawing. When I was using it for drawing reference, I find it to be too heavy on formula. I find that George Bridgman was much better for drawing. If I'm not mistaken, Hogarth was a student of Bridgman. But Bern Hogarth's books, which I'm sure you've probably seen, he has a series of them. There's Dynamic Anatomy, Dynamic Light and Shade. They're all fantastic references for form and kind of the mechanical qualities of how forms intersect and interlock in the body. And I find them just great for when you're trying to sculpt because they really describe interlocking volumes to me. Something that was pointed out to me by a life drawing teacher was that those drawings in those books are from his classes, and they're very overstated to make the points clear. In practice, you want to dial back from the level of extreme sort of mechanical or extreme carved quality you get to those Hogarth drawings. But man, those books are great. So it's a good reference. Here I'm working on the muscle masses of the palm. There's 3. And coming back into the ribs now. And now I'm just trying to catch shadow between the ribs, just using the Z sub. And then smoothing back just a little bit. Using a low Z intensity on my smooth brush, you can see it's dialed back a bit. Now coming back in with the clay tubes brush and continue to work the abdominal muscles. Right now he really looks like Voldemort from Harry Potter. And that's bothering me at this point. I definitely want to fix that, but it's all coming down to that nose, how to resolve that nose. As I was working on this character, I was thinking of Ray Bradbury's The Halloween Tree. There's the lead character in that takes the children on the tour of Halloween. This guy is starting to look a lot like I picture that character. I don't know if any of you have read that book, but I recommend it. It's a good one. Now here I'm working the external obliques. And this is good. When I step down my subdivision levels, if the form still looks good to me, if it still feels right, that's really, I find that really exciting. That's a good feeling when I'm working on something. If I step down to the lowest subdivision level and it's still working, and I was feeling really good about the way those obliques were looking and the rib cage as I step down. There's problems here on the back where I want to fix where the waist is interlocking with the torso. There needs to be a rhythm. There needs to be a sweep where that external oblique, that flank pad, is coming down, sweeping down from just behind the rib cage. Just barely. Now I'm going to suggest, or going to catch some shadow, here in the back, scooting these shapes around. Definitely want to make sure that I have the sense that these scapulas are under skin. Now going in with the clay tubes brush again and just stroking down the length of the spinalis, the muscles running down the sides of the spine. I think it's the erector spinae. Now stroking along the length of the pectoralis muscles. Catching shadow again using the standard brush and Z sub. And still just going in, making some slight adjustments using the move brush. picking out shadow again using the standard brush. A lot of times I find that, you know, getting some nice looking form on the surface is just about picking out where you want to cast the shadow. Like I was saying on the bicep, you don't try and draw a line around the whole bicep. Just pick out the shadows around it, or the scapula. Pick out the shadows around the scapula, and it'll describe the form. Here I'm using the clay tubes brush, or the standard brush, to carve the ribs of the back. If someone's really skinny, they're going to have ribs showing in their back, and I've stepped down my subdivision levels and smoothed him now. Now I'm going to continue etching in those ribs, and as we step up the subdivision levels, they'll continue to be visible there, and I'll continue to accentuate them using the clay tubes brush and the standard brush. And scooting that armpit around. Which the back wall of the armpit is just the scapula. Now I'm using the move brush to create some sharp points in the rib cage here, and that's just to give him more of a bit of a fantasy anatomy and a bit of aggression or danger in the rib cage. Kind of just a sort of a jagged, scary shape there. So at this point, it's really just about sculpting across transitions using the clay tubes brush, just to give a sense of there being skin and fat stretch over the skeletal anatomy. And also just massing out some muscle as well, like here in the tricep. I need to mass that out a bit. You can see that I work my way around the figure constantly. I'm already back down to the hands now. Still thinking about the thumb. Not really happy with that just yet, so trying to use the transpose tools to just repose that a little bit. Now I'm going to place some eyeballs inside the head here. I'm going to go to the light box, to the tool menu, scroll over just by clicking between two icons, and then double click the polysphere just to add that to the tool menu. I'll go back and select my character again and go to append, and then we'll just select that polysphere. It'll be pretty big. Alt click on it to select it. I'll turn off perspective mode for right now. We'll scale it down and then move it into position. I feel that at this stage it would be beneficial to have a sphere in there. Turn on transparency mode so we can see the eyeball as it actually relates to the shapes around it. I'm going to bring it forward a bit. And I'm going to select on the actual face now, and I'm going to bring this cheekbone forward because it's way too far back. Make sure I've got a nice bony ridge down here around the bottom of the ocular orbit. I want to make sure that that's defined, and that's going to help define the rest of the cheekbone here. I'm going to hollow this area out a little bit. And we'll go back to the move brush now, and I want to bring these eyelids forward a bit. I want to make sure that they're curving around the sphere of the eyeball. It's one of the nice things about having a bit of geometry there for the eyeball, is it helps you curve the eyelids and the shapes around the eye, curve them around that sphere. This is actually, I think it's really hard to get that form without some kind of guide there. There we go. I'm going to turn off transparency mode. I think we can bring this forward a bit more. Actually, I think this bony structure here, which is called the zygomatic process, can be brought forward. So trickiness around the brow line. We really haven't resolved a lot of those forms in the face just yet, but bring that out. All right, now we're ready to mirror that eyeball across. So what you want to do is make sure you've got the Z plugin Subtool Master installed. It's a free download from Pixelogic. It installs just like all the other plugins. You just unzip it into your ZBrush 4 Z Startup Z Plugs folder. Click Subtool Master. And first off, I don't want to do this while I've got the body selected. I want to make sure the eyeball is selected. So click Subtool Master, Mirror, across the x-axis and merge into one subtool, and click OK. And then that mirrors the eyeballs across and merges them. So it gives me a nice, this adds quite a bit of intensity to that face now that those aren't hollow sockets. And who knows, by the end of the illustration, they may end up as hollow sockets with some kind of pinpoint light inside them. That's something that I'm considering at this point, is, just how to deal with the eye area, but I'm probably going to have those spheres in there. I'll keep them in there all the way to the end in any case, and then make the decision on how to treat the eyes once I'm doing the final illustration. But for right now, I definitely want spheres there. I'm just catching little bits of shadow here between the structures around the eye socket and the temporal fossa, that hollow at the temple. And let's smooth that back. I'm going to go back in with the clay tubes brush. Catch a little bit of shadow there. That's kind of creepy. I'm going to knock that back a little bit with a smooth brush. And so we're increasing our time lapse again now. And at this stage, we're going to zoom into the face and start thinking some more about the character in the face here. Catching some shadow underneath the brow ridge there and trying to think about that transition. I don't want it to be just really generic or general. I really do want to sort of resolve what the skeletal anatomy is there and how the flesh is hanging off of that skull. You'll notice that I step down my subdivision levels a lot and then smooth and step back up. What I'm doing is I have my Z intensity turned down low on my smooth brush. So when I step down and smooth, it knocks back that detail a bit. Then when I step back up, ZBrush tries to reintroduce the detail and it creates a more subtle form. So here we go. This is the point where I decide that he needs a nose. So I'm adjusting the nasal bone and then using the clay tubes brush to build up a nose shape. And then using the move brush to pull out the alar cartilage, which is the tip of the nose and the wings of the nostrils on the sides. So I'm already happier seeing the nose on here. It feels like a character now, whereas that just empty socket just made him feel more like a corpse. So I'm going to stretch this nose out and give him a really jagged, a really sharp, dagger-like appendage on on his face. I'm going to make this nose look like a weapon almost. I want it to be very pronounced, very sharp. I'm thinking about the planes underneath the nostrils. And very quickly, we just dialed that nose in. It's all a matter of refinement now. Experimenting with the magnify brush now to enlarge the shape of the nose. But ultimately, I abandoned that. It's just it has a little too much of an inflate effect. But I do experiment a couple times with the brush just to see what might happen. A lot of times it's great to create happy accidents like that, to select a brush, and then just start using it on your model and see if anything interesting happens. And if it does, you can pursue it. And if it doesn't, you can always just undo it. So at this phase, I'm using the move brush to adjust the shape of the cheekbones. And now I want to create kind of a preliminary sort of skin texture. So I'm taking the standard brush with alpha 1 and I'm just carving, wrinkle flow through the face. And these don't have to be final, wrinkles that are really well formed. I'm really just gesturally sketching the direction that I expect the skin would shrivel. And it's just going to give me a nice preliminary kind of texture there. Now I've switched over to the teeth subtools, and I want to add some asymmetry to the mouth. And I want the teeth and gums to, echo the same, sharp angles that we have in the face. So I'm going to, angle them in and give some acuteness. Not cuteness, mind you, but acuteness, like an acute angle. I've been saying that a lot, and I want to make sure that, I'm not saying it needs to be cute, because this is definitely not my idea of cute. Maybe the centipede later on, but not this guy. So you can see I'm crowding these teeth together and really angling them towards the front. And I think it helps sort of echo the shape of the nose. What's happening with that nose?